via teleconference. As chairman of the Planning and Economic Development Committee, I find that due to the state of the emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that while there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order, however, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda on the city's website for the meeting link. To join by phone, it is 1-929-205-6099, meeting ID 840-0606-2636, passcode 265251. We previously gave notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting through public postings. Instructions have been provided on the City of Nashua's website, www.nashuanh.gov, and publicly noticed at City Hall and the Nashua Public Library. If anyone has a problem accessing the meeting via phone or channel 16, please call 603-821-2049 and they will help you connect. In the event that the public is unable to access the meeting via the methods mentioned above, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. I start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Alderman Laws, would you please take the roll and ask members to state why they can't attend and confirm that they can hear the proceedings and state who's present with them.
Thank you, Chairman Tenza. First and foremost, Alderman at Large David Tenza.
I'm present. I'm alone in the room, and so far I can hear everyone.
Alderman Jan Schmidt.
I am present and alone in the room and can hear everyone.
Alderman Tom Lopez.
I am present. I am alone in the room, and I'm participating this way because it's a virtual meeting, so there's nowhere to be.
Alderman at Large Ben Clemens.
I am here. I can hear everyone, and I'm by myself.
Alderman at Large Brandon Laws. I am here, surrounded by dogs, but otherwise by myself, and I can hear everyone. Chairman Tenza also in attendance. We have Alderman Dowd, Alderman Klee, and Community Development Director Sarah Marchand.
Great. Thank you. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to hold a public hearing on two pieces of legislation. The first is 021-048, and the second is 021-049. Director Marchand, would you like to talk about these in both at once now or separately?
Just one thing before you start, David.
Sure.
This is a public hearing, which you have a majority of the Board of Aldermen, but you need a majority of the Board of Aldermen for a public hearing. If it's a formal public hearing, and you have 8 people.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Sarah, I'm so sick of saying this, but you are on mute. Not to you, just in general.
You're still muted.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. I'm on my phone too, because of course my computer's not cooperating in the last 10 minutes. So yes, thank you. This is a public hearing of the Planning and Economic Development Committee because we are looking at changes to the land use code. I would be more than happy to speak to both at once if that is the pleasure of the board.
I think that'd be fine. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So first, Ordinance 021-048, amending the driveway sections of the ordinance. The purpose of this legislation is to take independent, disparate sections that are spread out across different parts of the land use code and through DPW standards, and to consolidate them into one spot. So it's very clear that we're talking about all residential driveways. And then to update them to comply with current best practices and ADA standards. So there are no changes to the dimensional standards from the existing ordinance, as in right now you can only have driveways. You can't have a driveway within 50 feet of an intersection or another driveway. That standard is still the same. Your driveway can't be wider than 24 feet within the front setback. That standard is still the same. So we're not proposing to change any of the standards, just to put them all in one section and then to refer to Public Works standards for anything more detailed than that, essentially. Today, you should have received a goldenrod copy of the amendment, the amended version, which is taking out number 4, which had talked about throat length. In reviewing that with Public Works, Fire, Building, and Code, there were some conflicts in other areas that we didn't initially see. And so the easiest way was to take that section out so we don't have any conflicts, and to let the Public Works standards dictate the right situation at the right time versus putting it into the zoning code, which needs a variance to change. So that's the proposal there. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'll keep going. Okay. The conservation subdivision regulations it's actually just adding one sentence, and it's the same sentence that was added into the elderly housing standards not that long ago. There is no change to the purpose of this regulation, which is simply to allow the same density as the underlying zoning district, but instead of spreading houses out throughout an entire parcel to create longer roads and more divvied up open space, the idea is you get the exact same density and you cluster that together to give us less roads for less long-term maintenance and better resiliency, and to keep our open space whole. So nothing's changing. The sole purpose of this change is to allow the form of ownership to be equal. So for right now, if we had 2 equal plans coming in for the same parcel, say it was a very large parcel and you could have 30 houses on it. If you were coming in and you were subdividing each lot out, you could go right to planning board. But if you wanted to do it as a condo, same layout, same form, same dimensional standards, same road, you would have to go to the zoning board of adjustment for a variance first and then to the planning board. And so we want to clarify that and just put this one sentence in that says you can have, it doesn't matter the type of ownership, we're making it equal across the board. So that is the goal of that change as well. Again, no density is changing, no dimensional standards are changing, no design or form is changing here. And I'd be happy to answer questions on either.
Questions from anyone? Alderman Lopez?
Yeah, Director Marchant, are you specifically aware of any programs either proposed, under development, or maybe in discussions with the community that, or with the city of Nashua, that might benefit from the second change?
There is nothing before the board at this time. The board has reviewed several applications over the past several years that have faced this kind of a dilemma. And I don't know of any that are coming in. I think there's always something coming in. I have not had specific discussions about any specific applications coming in, but my guess in this development in the market that we're in right now is that there are likely to be some in the next couple of years, absolutely.
Okay. Are any of them likely to be put on top of a former tannery site or anything like that?
No.
Just making
That's a great
sure. I got to check what's relevant to my ward.
Yep, no problem. I would also like to add, sorry, the Conservation Commission did discuss this last night and voted unanimously to recommend approval. The Planning Board is discussing this as we speak. And so if they finish before we do, I'll let you know the outcome.
Thank you. Anything further, Alderman Lopez? I don't see any. Okay, Alderman Clemens, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Well, I did want to recognize the fact that we're supposed to take testimony in favor and opposition, although I don't see anybody on the line other than the aldermen that are here. I don't know if you wanted to, if we had to run through that formality though.
So we are going to run through that formality. I figured before we hear testimony, made sense to hear from Director Marchand, so.
Okay, I do have questions. Should I ask them now?
Why don't you? Yeah, sure.
I guess my question is related to the ADA compliance on the driveways. I'm curious what that is.
Yes, certainly. That's a great question. It's very specifically regarding driveways that have sidewalks over at the end, where the intersection of the driveway and the right of way includes a sidewalk. And what those standards now say is what we've been practicing through Public Works, but it hasn't lined up with this ordinance. And that is that you have to meet the 2% slope on either side of the paved driveway surface to make sure that the connections to the sidewalk meet ADA grade requirements. So if you're putting in a new driveway and you have to take out a section of the sidewalk to do that, you have to update when you put it in, the sides that meet the sidewalk have to meet ADA standards, which is a 2% grade, and the special bumpy surface that I'm sure has a more technical name that is escaping me at the moment.
That's okay. So does this only affect new driveways, or would this affect a existing driveway if somebody wanted to, like, let's say repave it, or if they wanted to do something, or on the other hand, if the city was to upgrade the sidewalk next to it, how might this impact an existing driveway?
Great questions. So first, if the city was updating the sidewalks in that area, it would be the city's responsibility to meet ADA standards with the sidewalks. Second, if somebody, say, has a very old driveway and it's not paved and they're now going to pave the driveway, yes, they would have to comply with this standard. Or if somebody had a 12-foot wide driveway right now, and they, for many reasons, want to go to a wider driveway, right? Suddenly you have teenagers and there are 3 or 4 cars in the driveway instead of the 2 that used to be there. If they wanted to go up to the 24 feet of width, they would have to comply with these new standards, which they would have to do now anyways. It's just a convoluted process of how we get there. So, but yes, it would apply to existing driveways who were making changes, as well as new driveways.
Okay, and so I assume that if the city was because I live on a driveway like that, and it's actually non-compliant because I live in a house that's almost 100 years old. So, but nevertheless, I mean, someday, you know, the sidewalks might be updated around here, and I'm just wondering. So that cost would not be on the owner of the house. It would be on the city to make sure that they do that correctly. Am I understanding that correctly?
If the city was upgrading sidewalks, the city would be responsible for ADA compliance of the sidewalk tip downs to the driveway. If the homeowner is updating a driveway, then they're responsible for the ADA compliance of the intersection of the driveway and the sidewalks.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yep.
I see Alderman Dow, then Alderwoman Clee.
And just a question, you know, I think in Ward 3 and Ward 4 specifically, maybe even some in Ward 6, and there couldn't even be other places in the city that we have driveways right now that are non-compliant, particularly with the length. People have sort of made a driveway out of their front yard, and the cars sometimes stick out on the sidewalk. Well, this prohibits that. Is that in violation, or is it only if they decided to pave it and that wasn't long enough or wide enough?
That's a great question. Existing non-conforming driveways that have been existing non-conforming for, as Alderman Clemens says, 100 years. I mean, we have amazing aerial photography through pictometry every 2 years going back 20 something years, right? We don't have the capacity, nor do we have any intention, just like we don't yesterday, of making all these driveways come into compliance. The point is if you're upgrading, if you're doing something different, then you need to come in compliance. If it exists as it exists, it will not be any different than it was before.
The other question I have is, if you're going to be paving your driveway, do you have to pull a building permit?
You do not. You pull a driveway permit with the Department of Public Works.
Okay, so they would be the ones to tell them about the sidewalk requirement and all that. Okay.
Yes. In addition, they're making sure that the slopes are appropriate for drainage and you're not dumping water onto city roads. They're making sure that all those kind of design and engineering details that are required to preserve the city's road system and make it a safe approach for the driveway are met through that permitting process.
How do people know that they're supposed to contact the Department of Public Works? Because I've seen a lot of people do driveways and I doubt they even know that they had to talk to anybody.
If they ask, we tell them. I think there's many things that people should pull permits for that they don't always know about. We do our best that we can. And if anybody asks, or if we are actively seeing something that, especially if it looks unsafe or somebody calls and complains, that's kind of how we know. We certainly aren't a very proactive system, nor do we have the capacity to be so. But if anybody asks, all the departments work together very well, and we point them in the right direction.
So if somebody did a driveway, didn't get checked with DPW, and we found out they weren't in compliance, what's the action we'd take?
They would get an after the fact driveway permit, and they'd have to make sure that the driveway is in compliance with the standards. That's the same thing that would happen now.
Okay. All set.
Thank you. Alderman Clee.
Thank you. And to kind of add what Director Marchant said, Alderman Dowd, I had a constituent who paid first and applied later. And more because I don't want to say so much she was caught, but yeah, that's kind of what happened. And it was just a mix of misunderstandings. It truly was. And but then she went in front of the zoning board and she got all the variance, because in her particular case it was wider than it was it would have been. It was beyond the 24 feet. So, like for instance, my driveway is beyond the 24 feet. I'm pretty sure it is. I've never really measured, but I'm pretty sure it is. But it was that way when we got it. I have a feeling nothing was ever done officially. And if we went to pave it, we would then have to get all the variants and so on. And it could be denied. We would hope it wouldn't be, but it could be denied. But my question to you, Director Marchant, is with all the paving that we do, and I know that when Royal Oak was paved, which is where my driveway is, the city, and I don't have sidewalks, so it's not going to be quite the same thing, but I do know that on Hills Ferry, when they've done it, the city does what they call the apron of the driveway, so that everything marries in. Well, when they do that, they go into the sidewalk aspect of that. So at that point, the city would make sure that all the grade was appropriate for the sidewalk, and it would not be the residents' responsibility. If I understood you, that's what you were saying, correct?
That is correct.
Follow up, Alderman Tenza. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. My follow up is that I had a constituent who they decided that while the city was doing it, they might as well pave it. And so it was kind of one of those things that kind of becomes a little bit mushy as far as making sure the grade is done and everything else like that. in that case, do you think that they would just have to negotiate with the city as to who's going to make sure the sidewalk does that? Or
Yes, it
that's a
certainly would
gray
be.
area. Yeah.
It's the call of public works, but it also has very much to do with timeline. Who's doing what first? And so I think that that's really critical. We all know that with paving our roads and redoing our sidewalks, that there's many layers to that process that have different time components, right? There's many weeks between when we have to let things settle. So the timeline of when the driveway gets paved and exactly where it is in our paving process would also add to that situation. So it would be unique, and it would be part of their driveway permit process with Public Works. And I think that Public Works would do what they can to be as fair as possible, but it also depends on the availability of their contractor and our contractors to figure that out.
Okay. The only reason I asked this is because I do know that they've just released the paving project, and I've had a few people who've said to me, I'm going to get my driveway paved before then. And now that we're talking about this, I just want them to coordinate and work with the city, and so that everything is done properly, and something doesn't get dug up after you've done all that work. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate your answers.
Any other questions or comments for Director Marchant? All right, thank you, Director Marchant. Seeing none, I think we'll move to the public hearing portion of the meeting. So first is the public hearing in 021-048, amending the residential district ordinance with respect to residential driveways, which you just heard about. I'll start by asking for testimony in favor. Seeing none, I'll ask for testimony in opposition. Seeing none, again, I'll ask for testimony in favor. Again, seeing none, I'll ask for a testimony in opposition. Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed at 7:22 p.m. on that piece of legislation. Next is the public hearing for 021-049. As required, I'll start by calling for testimony in favor of 021-049, amending the Conservation Subdivision Plan Supplemental Use Regulations. Seeing none, I'll call for testimony in opposition. Seeing no testimony in opposition, I'll call for testimony in favor again. Seeing none, I'll call for testimony in opposition. Seeing none, I will declare the public hearing closed at 7:23 p.m. Everyone must be at the planning board testifying in favor and against these pieces. Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out, actually. Can we maybe in the future try not to schedule both meetings at the same time? Like, this feels a little bit Harry Potter-ish, where, like, if somebody did object, how do they go to two meetings,
So, and that's a good point. I think this is just a matter of timing. Because of the public hearing, we needed to give so much notice. And this was the first day that it would have worked out. So
I'm going to send a polite letter to Donna and be like, can you keep an eye out for this next time?
sure. But that being said, I'll ask for the minutes of the planning board meeting to see what the discussion was, and if there was anyone who showed up there in opposition or in favor.
I mean, I believe that the public has the opportunity to speak out. And if they were unclear about one meeting, now they have two. But it seems like we as aldermen didn't get any chance to entertain any objection, if there was any.
Well, I'll also, sorry, go
Correct me
ahead.
if I'm wrong, but it's going to go to the full board as well.
That's true. So they can talk then. But I mean, there's a public hearing for a reason. It's awkward to have a public hearing outside of the public's hearing.
Well, I guess the other point I'll make, Alderman Lopez, is that anyone's free to reach out to us via email or otherwise, and I don't believe we've received any positive or negative comments.
That email is spelled TNZCA.
Close. CZA.
CZA D at nashua.nh.gov.
That's right. All right, we'll move on to the regular meeting now of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. Public comment? Seeing none. Discussion by members of the committee? Seeing none. Communications, there are none. Unfinished business, there's none. No new business resolutions. Alderman Laws, do you want to do the new business ordinances?
Yes, Chairman Tenza. New business ordinance is 021-048, amending the residential districts ordinance with respect to residential driveways.
Thank you.
Go on, sorry.
No, I'll call on you, Alderman Laws, to make a motion.
I move to amend 021-048 as recommended by Director Marchant by roll call.
Okay, the motion is to amend as recommended by Director Marchant. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none. Alderman Laws, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Law says yes, Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
We have 5 yeas.
Okay, that ordinance 021-048 is amended. Motion carried. Alderman Laws, I'll just ask for another motion.
Thank you, Chairman. I move to recommend final passage of 021-048 as amended by roll call.
Okay, the motion is for to recommend final passage. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Law says yes, Alderman Tenza.
Yes,
And Chairman, we have 5 yeas.
the motion carries.
021-049, amending the conservation subdivision supplemental use regulations. Chairman, I move to recommend final passage of, I move to amend. I just got a blank here on my thing. Is it for final passage or is it to amend?
For final passage, Director Marchant, there were no amendments that you're recommending to 021-049, correct?
That is correct. Final passage, please.
All right, I move for final passage of 021-049 by roll call.
Thank you. Any discussion on that ordinance or that motion? All right, seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons,
Yes.
Alderman Laws says yes, Alderman Tenza.
Yes.
And Chairman, we have 5 yeas.
All right. That motion carried. Nothing has been tabled in committee. It's the time for public comment. Seeing none. Any discussion by members of the full members present tonight? Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, Alderman Laws, that's just a little confusing because the resolution, the ordinance was to amend a document that currently exists. It wasn't amending this particular ordinance, so it was for final passage. So it's just a little confusing the way it's written.
Thank you, Alderman Dowd. I'm like,
Oh,
He
he
also
agreed.
thanks you. Yes.
I was gonna say I'm like Ron Burgundy. If it's on the teleprompter, I'm gonna read it. So I just got a little confused there. I appreciate that.
Alderman Lopez?
Yeah, just a heads up to the committee. Director Cummings sent us a letter about the Mohawk Tannery. That was partly what I was asking Director Marchant again about, because I don't know whether this is helpful for them or not, or anything, because I don't know what they're building. But it might have been condos, so I felt like I should probably just check. He's sent a communication to the Board of Aldermen more as a warm-up. He does plan on doing an update presentation to kind of build general knowledge of it. pretty big project. So it should be coming down the pipe a little bit. He just wanted a little more time to figure out what he was going to do. I think we have to figure out from the developer how far they're getting to. It is open to public comment for people who are interested on the EPA's website as well. So if you have thoughts, that's the project where we're figuring out how to move the contained asbestos site, the Mohawk Tannery waste and all that kind of stuff in the area most appropriate in order to allow development of that site.
Great. Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Alderman Dowd?
Yeah, I believe if it's developed through the state as a condominium association, we have very limited control of what they do on condominium grounds. Director Marchand, would you agree with that, or?
Partly. We have full zoning control. We have full initial design control. They have to meet our land use code, whatever development happens on that site or any site, whether condominiums anywhere. The state AG's office has control over the terms of the condominium and what it means to the owners of that condominium and that conveyance. But as far as the actual form of the development and the zoning, that is all within the city's purview.
Right, but if they were like repaving driveways and things, they wouldn't have to get a permit from the city.
Yes, they would.
Well, they don't in a lot of condominium associations I know.
Just make a note of that, Director Marshall.
Well,
And just to be clear, I don't know at all what the project is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be condominiums or like housing. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't accidentally either throwing a monkey wrench or greasing the wheel, like without knowing. I'll do either one if I think it's the right thing to do, but I didn't know what the project was, so I figured I should check.
I'm not
So-
sure they do.
Alderman Dowd, I mean, I think there's a difference between existing condominium associations and new development, right? They would have to come, and Director Marchand can speak more to this, but in order for the initial approval of the plan, they would have to come and present what the site plan is.
Well, that's why I was talking about repaving driveways at some point, because condominium associations themselves, at least on our condominium association, they're responsible for repaving the driveways, and I doubt they pull permits. I'm not even sure they pull permits when they redo the streets.
Director Marchand, would you speak to that?
I think I will just lightly say that it is most important to the city that permits are pulled when any private road or private driveway is intersecting with the city system. Again, to ensure that drainage and slopes and ADA compliance. I believe that driveways on private roads are held to the same standards. They have to meet the same standards. They're still subject to ADA requirements. They're still subject to all the drainage requirements per their site plans. And so that permit would ensure that compliance. So as a blanket statement, all repaving of driveways requires a permit.
Alderman Lopez?
So the first condominium association to screw that up is going to find out one way or the other. But we're not looking for trouble.
Mhm. Well, and on this discussion, you know, I would assume that reputable paving companies, when they pave a driveway or pave a road, know that they need to pull permits. So that may be happening without the owner even knowing
Could be.
that it's happening. So, and I would assume that if one of the large, especially larger condo associations, the companies that they are contracting with probably are doing other jobs for the city and want to stay on the city's good graces. So hopefully they are doing everything they should be doing as far as pulling permits.
So not the ones dumping their leftover junk in Walmart.
Exactly.
Right, the reputable ones.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, any further general discussion? Remarks by the alderman. Okay, non-public session is not necessary. Alderman Laws, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
Thank you, Chairman Tenza. I move to adjourn by roll call.
Motion is to adjourn. Any discussion?
It's non-debatable.
Not debatable, yeah.
All right,
We're not allowed to discuss.
I'm not sure that would stop people from discussing it anyways, but.
It would not.
Laws, if you could, please call the roll.
Alderman Schmidt,
Yes.
Alderman Lopez,
Yes.
Alderman Clemmons.
Yes.
I vote yes, and Alderman Tenza, Chairman Tenza.
Yeah, yes.
And 5 yeas.
All right, well, the meeting is 7:36 and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming and getting through this tonight. We appreciate it.